Hey, what's going on, everybody? Brent Hayden here, coming at you on this Friday morning, talking tonight's 8 game slate around the association. Before we dig in, quick reminder, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. That way, you will get notified whenever I post a new video. Also, make sure you hit that like button if you like the content that I am putting out. It definitely goes a long way to helping me produce more content. If you stumbled across this video and you're not already following me on Twitter, make sure you hit that follow button over on the Twitter machine. My Twitter handle at BrentHyden1 is in the description down below. While you're over there, make sure you send me a direct message. Find out how you can get access to my daily content, my projections, Discord channel, daily breakdowns, and all that good stuff for a very affordable one-time price, and that covers all the way through the playoffs this season. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dig into the first game of the night. Clippers coming in on a back-to-back heading to Orlando. Clippers 1.5 point favorites in this one, 216 over under. Not a whole lot that I'm just super excited about in this matchup. I will say there are a few things to cover. They get a good rebounding matchup here. The Magic just terrible so far this season on the boards. 50.8 rebounds allowed to opponents so far this season. The downside is that like their primary big man, Marcin Gortat, not going to play a lot of minutes, even though this is a revenge game for him. You're probably going to get some extended run out of Boban here. We saw him last night actually come in, played 23 minutes against Philly, 15 and 11 in that amount of time. I think he might be somewhat popular. If you're playing on FanDuel, I think he makes like one of the best punt options. I normally don't recommend punting center, but Boban tonight against a front court that has two legitimate 7-footers. I actually think Boban is going to get a decent amount of run here. Yeah, I think this could be a Boban night. But if you look at the rest of this Clippers team, Tobias Harris actually leads the team in rebounding chances, percentage of rebounding chances at 69%. I like him a significant amount. The hardest part is like he just comes in at a very tough price point at 7,300. But this is a really good spot for Tobias Harris, coming off a solid outing against Philly. Like nothing to write home about. But 7,300. If he gets you 40 plus fantasy points, you'll take that. And over on FanDuel, he comes in at a 7,700 again. So what I feel really good about in cash. I don't have a ton of interest like tournament upside here with him, but he's someone that I'm perfectly okay with, and he gets the added benefit of a revenge game. So if you're into that kind of thing, there you go. I do like Danilo Gallinari a significant amount. That mid 6K price tag, just someone that is just really consistent, even at 7K. Like this guy's just markedly consistent. Most nights going to get you over at least 30 fantasy points, 35. Not something to write home about, but still solid production out of a guy. You could see him get a few extra rebounds in there as well, so I do like him. Over on FanDuel especially, Lou Williams, I talked about him in Discord yesterday a significant amount. Not someone that has monster upside most nights, but gonna come off the bench, have like a 30+% usage rate. I think he was over 40% last night, just shooting a ton. Gonna score a whole lot. Cash games, I think he's perfectly fine. Just the usage that he has off the bench is just insane. Has tournament winning upside if you want to roll him out. Like if he comes in and he gets you 34 36 fantasy points because he scores 32 33 real life points, like you'll take that all day long, and he's never going to have a lot of ownership. But even in cash games, just 19 shots in 24 minutes, that's just ridiculously insane. I have a lot of interest in Lou Williams pretty much all formats. Patrick Beverly on DraftKings at 4K. Minutes are going to be there for him. Like I know there's been times this season where he has played fewer minutes, had some foul trouble, some blowout risk in a couple of these games, but production hasn't really been there for him. It's not like an ideal matchup against the Orlando Magic, but 4K for a guy that's going to be playing 26, 28, 30 minutes most nights, I'm perfectly fine going back to Patrick Beverly and cash games and tournaments. The rest of this team though, not terribly intriguing. I guess Shea Gilgis Alexander is fine in tournaments. Um, Not really looking anywhere else. Avery Bradley just continues to be terrible, but again, is going to be getting minutes, I think, on FanDuel, where he is, 3,600 makes an intriguing punt option, but I think there's going to be better places to go there. On the flip side of things, Nikola Vucevic, very, very tough to pay. 8,600 for him over on DraftKings, 8,900 on FanDuel. This is a dream matchup for him. Like we saw what Embiid was able to do against the Clippers last night. This is a team, they're not like super bad on the boards. They're giving up about 46.6 rebounds per game. But they're giving up a ton of second chance points, like 17.2 second chance points per game. They don't have a counter for any of these offensively skilled big men like Nikola Vucevic has monster upside in this spot. It's going to be really tough to get him in, but if you make it a point like in tournaments to build around him, I think you can still build a pretty solid lineup. Tournaments definitely someone that has a ton of appeal here. I'm okay with Aaron Gordon. Prices come up a little bit after a solid outing, but still someone that I do have a little bit of interest in for GPPs. Jonathan Isaac over here on DraftKings at 4,400. I like him a significant amount. Very inconsistent, especially the last couple of games. Minutes kind of in flux, but someone that does have monster upside. 4,400, really tough to get away from that price. And the same goes for Mo Bamba, 4K. Again, against a Clippers team giving up a lot of second chance points, not really able to keep opponents off the glass too terribly much. Mo Bamba at 4K, gonna play a decent amount of minutes. Like, I mean, he's been over 20 minutes at almost like three straights, like 4 games so far this season. So over half of their games so far this season, he's been over 20 minutes. Not the worst, production in the world. So like someone that I think you can roll out on DraftKings. Not going to go there on FanDuel though. And Evan Fournier, tournament option, just usage continues to be there for him. Just hasn't really been able to produce with that usage. Moving on to Houston at Brooklyn. Houston slight favorites in this one. 2-point favorites, 217 over under. Rockets coming in 4-game losing streak. James Harden doubtful for this game. James Ennis, however, is most likely going to suit up, which makes things a little interesting. But yeah, Chris Paul. I'm going to continue to go back to the well here with Chris Paul. Usage is still there. 36 fantasy points per minute, 27% usage rate without James Harden this season. If you roll that back, dating back to last season, 32.3% usage rate, 1.59 fantasy points per minute. And I think that the thing to keep in mind with Chris Paul, like these past 2 games where he's been without James Harden, look at these shooting numbers. 6 of 19, 31% from the floor. 3 of 13, 23% from the floor. Like a 40% shooter for the season. I don't have his career averages in front of me, but I would venture to say 45, 46% probably career average for Chris Paul. So like, I understand again he's not been great, but it's really tough to fade him in the spot. And I'm pulling up his career averages right now to clarify where we're at here. So career average field goal percentage 47.2%, 37.1% from 3. So he is almost 10 points below his career average shooting from the floor. Yeah, there's going to be regression and it's going to hit hard, and he's going to have a monster game one of these times without James Harden. So I think tonight's the last night we're going to be able to get Chris Paul without James Harden. Cash games 100% lock for me in the spots. I'm going back to him, building around him. Same with Eric Gordon, like not someone that I'm super like high on in cash. But like at 5,500, that's really tough to get away from. And again, I talked about it last game. Again, a guy just shooting a ton. I mean, look at these shooting numbers: 18 field goal attempts, 22%; 14 field goal attempts, 21%; 21 field goal attempts, 23.8%. Again, another guy who is shooting well below his career averages, and that's just not going to continue. Like Eric Gordon, for his career, 42.9% from the floor, 37.4% from three. I mean, he's shooting 12, almost 13%, 12% below his career average from the floor, and 15% below his career average from three. Like, if you think that's going to continue to happen, like, you're just flat out insane. There's just no way he's going to continue to shoot that poorly. Like, yeah, it's one of those things where regression's going to hit for him. We've talked about it so many times already this season with like Klay Thompson and some of these other guys. Like, he's just not going to continue to shoot like absolute garbage. So Eric Gordon's someone that I absolutely love. 5,900, I'm okay with it in cash and tournaments. 55, I'm much better. I'm much more okay with over on FanDuel. You can Carmelo in the spots. I expect with James Ennis to come back, it might eat a little bit into some of his minutes and shot attempts. So I'm not like super high on Carmelo. Like, I don't ever feel like you should ever be super high on Carmelo. And then James Ennis, who is supposed to come back in the spot, 3,600 on draft or on FanDuel. Someone I absolutely love punting with in the spot. Capella's production does take a slight hit without James Harden on the floor. But it's a solid matchup. He's going to be super chalk, especially over here on DraftKings. I expect him to be super chalk on FanDuel as well. I'm probably going to be fading personally because I think there's better ways to go, but you obviously can't deny him a good matchup for Clint Capella. And then PJ Tucker and Gerald Green, just guys to, plug in if they fit, but not super excited about either one of them. Under the Brooklyn side of things, their rotation continues to be just like something I don't really like dealing with. 10 different guys played in their last game against Detroit. We did see Karis LeVert, Jared Dudley, and Joe Harris play a ton of minutes. That was an overtime game, but LeVert 39, Dudley 37, Joe Harris 40. Why Jared Dudley is playing that many minutes, I have no freaking clue. I think some of it had to do with Jared Allen getting in foul trouble, which made their rotation a little shorter as far as with like Rondé Hollis Jefferson and whatnot, but Karis LeVert's the one guy that you do feel pretty comfortable in his minutes. 6,600. It's not the best matchup. It's not the worst. You could definitely do worse than Karis LeVert, but I'm not just super high on him. Usage is pretty secure, so I do kind of like him. It is interesting to note, like, especially for tournaments, Karis LeVert, 42% of his shots come at the rim. Houston opponents are shooting almost 72% at the rim against him, so he does have tournament upside if he can just get to the basket a significant amount tonight. So tournaments for sure. Jared Allen, like, I understand he's been in foul trouble. I understand his minutes have been in flux. 5,100 on DraftKings. I'm close to hitting the lock button on Jared Allen at that price. Like, we know he has monster upside, 30, 37, 39. If he can get those 30 minutes, if he can stay out of foul trouble. Even against Detroit last game, 25 fantasy points in 22 minutes. I do expect him to play closer to 24, 26, maybe upwards of 30 in a very, 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 very good matchup against a Rockets team, 1.56 fantasy points per possession allowed to the roll man in the pick and roll, 62.5% field goal shooting with the score frequency of 67%. Jared Allen, 34.2% of his possessions this season are as the roll man in the pick and roll. Like, Jared Allen at 5,100, way too cheap. I am even going to be considering locking him in cash at that price tag. You can roll with Dinwiddie and D'Angelo Russell in tournaments, but again, you're kind of playing with fire and a hot hand approach. But if you're building 20, 30, 50, 150 lineups, it's definitely a good idea to have a little bit of exposure to one of those guys. I am really high on Rondé Hollis Jefferson in this spot. 4,900 over here on DraftKings. Guy has, 30 plus fantasy point upside. We've seen it already this season. His minutes, 27, 25. I expect him to be in about that range. And when this game goes small for Houston, Rondé's going to play some minutes at the 5, and that's going to be really good for him. This is a spot where I have a lot of interest in Rondé at 4,900, and even over on like FanDuel. 5,400. I still like that price a significant amount. So like Jared Allen and Rondé Hollis Jefferson, two guys I'm going to have a significant amount of interest in this spot tonight. You can Joe Harris, you can Alan Crabb. I think Alan Crabb has like something like 6 3-point attempts away from hitting a landmark. Let me see. I've got it right here on my phone. Nonetheless, Alan Crabb needs 6 3-pointers for 500. So maybe he's gunning for that mark. If you're trying to build a narrative lineup, go for it. But their price is not very appealing. Moving on, Indiana, Chicago. Indiana favored in this one, of course, because well the Bulls are terrible. Indiana 7-point favorites, 216 over under. The Indiana side of this thing is pretty appealing. Chicago defense absolutely terrible. They're giving up close to 10% more fantasy points per possession than league average. Yeah, that makes me have a ton of interest in a lot of these guys. Victor Oladipo 8,700 over on DraftKings. 9K over on FanDuel. Like, I know he's averaging less than 40 fantasy points per game, but it feels like almost every single night he's just going to come in and give you like at least 40 with lots of upside, especially in this spot. Chicago turning the ball over a ton this season. He's going to draw an individual matchup most of the time against a guy in Zach LaVine who has a 33+% usage rate. Victor Oladipo just has a monster ceiling in this spot. Like we haven't seen the big like 55, 60 fantasy point games out of Oladipo. I think it's coming tonight. He is a guy that I'm hitting that smashing him into every single lineup. I'm hitting that lock button on Victor Oladipo tonight for sure. I love him. Like I understand the price is just a touch too high, but even at 9K, like he's gonna come in with like pretty low ownership in this spot. So I love Victor Oladipo here. The point guards, I'm leaning towards Corey Joseph in this spot just because he's a little bit cheaper, and the minutes have been fine for him. Like we're seeing outside of a couple of these games, we're seeing mid to high 20s, even sometimes in the 30s. And if this game blows out, he could get a couple extra minutes towards the end of the game. I like him a significant amount here at that current $3,900 price tag. I think given how some of the other games are going to shake out, like you could get pretty low ownership on Corey Joseph. I'm fine with him in cash. Someone that I have a decent amount of interest in, and same with Darren Collison. It is just a fantastic matchup for Darren Collison. Someone that I have absolutely no issue with in all formats. The rest of these guys, Bogdanovich, this is the kind of matchup where you really want to like get some exposure to Bogdanovich. The Bulls transition defense, 1.3 points per possession allowed so far this season, 68% shooting, 58% score frequency. Bogdanovich, 29% of his possessions come in transition this season. He's averaging like 5 points per game. He ranks in the 87th percentile of players in the entire NBA in transition scoring. This is the kind of matchup where he could absolutely thrive. So I have a lot of interest in Bogdanovich. 4,800, pretty solid price tag there. 45 on FanDuel, a guy that I'm absolutely loving as kind of like the higher end of punt options for FanDuel. Thad Young, completely fine going back to the well with him. He's one of the guys where you feel pretty safe in his 30+ minutes. Production in the mid 20s, has plenty of upside as we saw last time out. Not going to get 5 steals, 3 blocks, but he is the kind of guy that can notch a few extra steals and kind of pad his floor. 6,100, I'm probably not going to go there on FanDuel, but that $5,200 price tag against a matchup against Jabari Parker, pretty good spot for Thaddeus Young. And then if you're building a bunch of tournament lineups, it's really tough to like either one of these guys because they're going to be splitting minutes. Sabonis and Turner, I think they played a couple minutes alongside each other last game, but tournament lineups, I would definitely be getting some exposure to both in this spot. I think Sabonis, we obviously know, has the higher ceiling, so I would prioritize him. But 2 options that you can feel pretty good about in GPPs. On the flip side of things, Zach LaVine, 7,600 on DraftKings, just still too cheap for a guy that has basically a 40-point floor most nights. Is going to draw a tough matchup a lot of the time against Oladipo, but someone that like you can feel pretty confident in. It's a fade for me on FanDuel, but I'm not like hitting that lock button on Levine. But the 33% usage, really tough to overlook. The rest of the Chicago team, like they're better options on DraftKings, where like Wendell Carter Jr.'s 5K, just coming off, again, solid solid outings in three straight. His price just hasn't really adjusted. Over here on FanDuel, like screw that, not paying 7,200 at power forward for Wendell Carter Jr. Jabari Parker, if you are a glutton for punishment, sure, but I'm just not gonna like prioritize any of those guys in my lineups tonight. Moving on, we have OKC and Washington. Washington 3-point favorites in this one. 231.5 over under. Looks like the line might be coming down just a touch, but really good spot, I think, for Oklahoma City. Russ is just still too cheap at 10.9 on DraftKings. FanDuel, it's a little bit of a different story at 11.7, but again, cash games perfectly fine building around Russell Westbrook in this spot. I mean, 50 plus fantasy points is pretty much his floor on most nights. Washington has really struggled against point guards this season. Even if you take out the Steph Curry monster game, they still have struggled against point guards this season. Really good spot for Russell if you want to pay up. Paul George, really expensive, 9K over on DraftKings and 9,800 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's a guy that I have a hard time getting away from in cash, just because 40 plus fantasy points is pretty much a floor for him most nights, even if he shoots like absolute dog shit like he did last night, like 10 rebounds, 11 points, still 40 plus fantasy points. Like I'm happy with that in cash games. Tournaments, no, not really. The other guys, Steven Adams, I do have a little bit of interest in as far as like a tournament option, 7,100 and 75 over on FanDuel. I'm going to draw a matchup with Dwight Howard for probably 20, 22, maybe 24 minutes, which is a little concerning, but we're dealing with Dwight Howard, who is coming, into his first game, coming off a banged up ass. Like he's talked about how it hurts to sit down. I could see Steven Adams trying to, elbow him down inside and, kind of take advantage of him here. So I like Steven Adams in tournaments, close to a cash game option if you're trying to pay in that 7K range. Over there, Jeremy Grant, just a great cash game value at 4K on DraftKings and 4,900 on FanDuel. Not a ton of upside. We've seen him, in the mid 20s since basically coming into the starting lineup. Just a guy just going to give you consistent production, give you, maybe 10, 12, 14 points, get you some rebounds, get you a couple blocks or steals. Just a guy, just a cash game guy for me. Not a ton of upside, but someone that you can feel pretty comfortable in his minutes and his role on this team. Flipping over to the Washington side of things, John Wall at 8,100 on DraftKings. There should definitely be some tournament appeal here with him. Over on FanDuel, 9,400, no. But 8,100 on DraftKings should be, like I said, definitely a tournament option here. Someone that you can use to pivot off of, like the Chris Pauls or something like that. 29.1% usage rate so far this season, at least 20 real points in 4 of 7 games. Just a consistent scorer, can get you the double-digit rebound or double-digit assists. Again, tournament option only. Beal ranks second on the team in usage at 26.7%. The OKC defense has not been terrible. Opponents averaging like 112 points per game against them. At least that's what it was whenever I pulled these numbers a couple days ago. But Beal at 7K on DraftKings, too cheap. Solid floor, lots of upside. I mean, we've seen the 50-plus fantasy point games out of him a couple times already this season. Generally going to get you in the mid to high 30s, can get you over 40 most nights. Over on FanDuel, 8,200, that's a hard pass. Again, just a better option over on DraftKings. unfortunately, there's very large discrepancies in pricing in most of these games. So like there's going to be a lot of guys that are really good options on DraftKings and really bad options on FanDuel, and there's going to be guys that are really good options on FanDuel, really bad options on DraftKings just because of the way the pricing, there's just such a large gap for a lot of these guys in pricing. So, unfortunately, that is a thing this season. I'm not chasing the Abrinas, Hamadou, Diallo, like shooting guard crap from OKC, by the way. Dwight Howard on DraftKings, 5,200. Again, no real clarity so far what his minutes are going to be, but he has upside at 5,200. Like he can get you 30 plus fantasy points even in a tough matchup. If you're building 20 plus lineups, I would maybe sprinkle in like 2% Dwight Howard. The rest of these guys, not going to go with Otto Porter, Morris. There's just better places to go in their price range tonight. Moving on, we have the Knicks heading to Dallas to take on the Mavericks. This one, interesting game. Dallas 6-point favorites, 216.5 over under. Tim Hardaway Jr. for the Knicks has been stringing together some excellent games here. Put up 37 points, 7 3-pointers Wednesday against the Pacers. He scored at least 24 points in 7 of the team's first 8 games. High usage guy, 30.1%, taking 40% of the team's 3-pointers this season. And that's really important whenever you look at the fact that the Dallas Mavericks opponent shooting 48.3% from 3-point range against them this season. Tim Hardaway Jr. is pricey, 7,100 over on DraftKings. He is 76 over on FanDuel. Tim Hardaway Jr., a guy it's going to be a core option for me tonight. Like Oladipo and Tim Hardaway Jr. and a couple other guys we're going to talk about, Chris Paul. Like they're guys that I'm like cramming in my lineups tonight just because the matchup is so good for him. So he's rarely safe, but with the amount of shots he's putting up and how bad Dallas's defense is, he's a guy that I have a hard time not just hitting that lock button on for sure. Damian Dotson has come back down to earth a little bit, but of the guys in this rotation that you feel pretty confident in minutes, Damian Dotson is one of them. Double-digit field goal attempts, another guy that can hit from 3. This is a spot where at 4,400 on DraftKings and 5,300 on FanDuel, I'm pretty high on him here. So like if you wanted to get, good exposure to this game, Dotson, Tim Hardaway Jr., 2 guys that you could definitely do that with. At least from the Knicks side of things. Frank Ntilikina on DraftKings, 4,100, very good price there. 53, FanDuel, nope, hard pass. I don't know that I want to chase the Alonzo Trier stuff. Been playing a decent amount of minutes the last 2 games. I guess if you wanted to punt, what is he over here on FanDuel? 3,800? Sure. 36 DraftKings? I'm going to look elsewhere. Cantor in tournaments is fine. I expect him to probably get a little bit extra run here because DeAndre Jordan should just be all up in Mitch Robinson tonight. So I think Cantor could get some extra run here. Perfectly fine in tournaments. And then Noah Vonleh coming off a monster game. A guy still just consistently rebounding. Assist numbers have been really solid for him. Getting you some blocks and steals pretty much every single night. 4,800 on DraftKings, like he's a great cash game option. You're a little worried about his minutes most nights, but if he's getting you in the mid to upper 20s, you're fine with that. 5,700, more of a tournament option on FanDuel. Dallas side of things, Harrison Barnes continues cash game, just a guy just too cheap for the minutes and role he has at 5,300. Little bit of a different story over here on FanDuel at 6K. Like probably not going to get you 30 plus fantasy points most nights, but someone that you can feel really good about in cash just given how many minutes he's going to be playing. I expect Dennis Smith Jr. to draw defense from Ntilikina. They might throw him on Luka. but that has me kind of off Dennis Smith Jr., and I'm a little concerned with what happened to him in the last game where he only played like 24 minutes, 23 minutes. I think a lot of that was game script, and JJ Barea was just destroying the Lakers, so they rolled with him over Dennis Smith Jr. So, like, if you wanted to do Dennis Smith Jr. or JJ Barea in tournaments, you're hoping for one of the outlier games where they just greatly exceed their expected outcome. I'm fine with either one of those. Luka Doncic, I can't do it at point guard on DraftKings 7,400. There's better places to go, I think, tonight. Wesley Matthews, someone that I'm always going to be interested in as long as he continues to be like mid 4Ks, right around that 5K mark. 5,700, that's going to be a pass for me on FanDuel. And then DeAndre Jordan, too expensive for GPPs. I think I just don't see him getting on top of that $8,300 salary too often. 8,600, just again, not going to see him get on top of that salary too many times. But in cash games, he's a pretty safe option, throwing out that game last time out. Heading to Chalk City for Memphis at Utah. Utah 8.5-point favorites, 210.5 over under. I call this Chalk City because Donovan Mitchell is out. Alec Burks is doubtful. And that's going to move people onto Ricky Rubio at 5,700 on DraftKings, 6,200 over on FanDuel. Gonna see a usage boost. Gonna get some extra shots. Gonna get some extra assist opportunities. Even though it is a very, very not good matchup, Ricky Rubio, I am fine with him being a cash game option tonight for you. Again, going to be super popular. Tournaments, you're probably going to want to look elsewhere if you're trying to target guys from this game. I think you want to look into a couple other places. Dante Exum going to be a pretty popular option in this spot as well. Again, perfectly fine with him in cash games. I have him projected for a healthy amount of minutes in the spot, and when he gets minutes, he can produce. He can get you some rebounds, assists, get you some real scoring. Exum 27.6% usage, 0.96 fantasy points per minute with Donovan Mitchell off the floor, dating back to last season. I didn't pull the numbers with Alec Burks off the floor, but someone that's I think is going to be a pretty good option here. Let me pull those numbers real quick, and we'll see. Dating back to last season, let's see. Alec Burks, take him off. Donovan Mitchell, take him off. Let's just do this season because I don't want to filter out all the other guys. I've got to take Rodney Hood off. That should do it. So dating back to last season with Alec Burks and Donovan Mitchell out on DraftKings, Dante Exum, 29.5% usage rate. Ricky Rubio, 26.4, 1.10 fantasy points per minute. Guy that stands out, really solid value tonight whenever you take these guys off the floor. Jay Crowder, actually, 27.5% usage rate, 0.94 fantasy points per minute, coming in at 5,100. Again, not the greatest of matchups. Pretty solid numbers out of him, though. A guy that's going to play right around that 28, 30-minute mark. Factor in 0.94 fantasy points per minute. I'll take that all day long at that $5,100 price tag. Even over here on FanDuel, $5,100. Yeah, I'll take that all day long. But I definitely like Dante Exum here. I think on FanDuel, if you're trying to be contrarian, Grayson Allen, a guy to consider, has produced fairly well when given the minutes so far this season. What did he... let me see in this Dallas game, 13 minutes, 3 of 3 from the floor, 11 points. Only played, 13 minutes. I'm perfectly fine with Grayson Allen as like a super contrarian like FanDuel punt. But mostly Rubio, Crowder, Exum. You could talk me into some Ingles and some favors just because you're going to get a couple extra shots. But last time these teams played, Memphis went super small. They had 4 guards plus Marc Gasol on the floor. And I think that's going to play Derek Favors out in this spot, and that's going to make the Joe Ingles and the Jay Crowders better options. We saw last game actually. Exum and Rubio close the game or play a significant amount of minutes together alongside each other. That's going to really help both of those guys. So I would focus more on those guys. On the Memphis side of things, Gasol really, really cheap over on DraftKings, 7,200. We saw him get on top of that salary in the last time these teams faced off. Did foul out, 44 fantasy points though, 6-15, 13 rebounds. Like, I'm okay with Gasol in tournaments. I'm okay with Conley in tournaments. We saw him produce really well in this matchup. We've seen some of the point guards that can drive effectively be able to take advantage of Ricky Rubio and this Utah defense. So I'm completely fine if you want to take, some tournament shots on Conley. I'm mostly off of the Memphis side of this game, though. Moving on, Toronto at Phoenix. Woohoo, 227 over under Toronto, 11-point favorites. We do have Devin Booker somewhere between doubtful and questionable. It's Phoenix, so whatever. Isaiah Cannon questionable, Fred VanVleet questionable, OG Anunoby probable for this game. And we do know that TJ Warren has been inserted into the starting lineup over Ryan Anderson. The Raptors are in a really, really, really good spot. Obviously, you do have to be concerned a little bit about the blowout potential in this game. But something that I tried to harp on yesterday in Discord chat is like, one, you can't project blowouts. And like, a blowout's not going to lower someone's ceiling. Like, Kyle Lowry has a 55, 60 fantasy point ceiling. Blowout isn't going to lower that ceiling. The same thing with Kawhi Leonard. Like, Kawhi Leonard still has 60 plus fantasy point upside. A blowout isn't going to take that away. It's going to make it less likely that he hits that upside, but it's not going to lower that upside. So, like, if you have interest in these guys, Kawhi Leonard, a little bit pricey, but again, if you want to roll out Kawhi Leonard because, you feel pretty confident he can get you 50, 55 fantasy points, even if this game blows out, go for it. Same with Kyle Lowry. Like, Leonard more of a cash game option just because he can do more, get you the steals, rebounds, has the higher usage rate. But like, Kyle Lowry, perfectly fine in tournaments. The same goes for Danny Green. I absolutely love him in tournaments at that $4,500 price tag. I do have a significant amount of interest in Serge Ibaka. Like, if this game does blow out, maybe he gets 27, 28 minutes. But we've seen him be able to get on top of this, $5,500 salary in limited time this season. Going to be some rebounding potential available for him. And with DeAndre Ayton at the 5, I would not be shocked to see Serge Ibaka get the start here. So Serge Ibaka is someone I feel really good about in cash. The rest of the guys, Valanciunas, tournaments, always, going to be someone that I have interest in tournaments, especially at 5,300. Just a really good price. I mean, over 30 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4. I'm okay with that. Fred VanVleet and Wright's kind of going to eat into each other a little bit, but again, in tournaments, if you're trying to project a blowout, you're hoping that these guys get you 18, 20 minutes and they have upside at their prices. So if you do absolutely 100% think that this is going to be a blowout, by all means, get some exposure to the bench guys. But if you think there's any chance in hell that Toronto or that Phoenix keeps us somewhat close, you have to at least consider Lowry and some of these other guys as good options here. If Booker is back, I think it is more likely this game stays close. But without Booker, I mean, the Suns have lost all their last 6 games by an average of 20.7 points. So yeah. Phoenix side of things, TJ Warren, interesting in tournaments just because, he is going to be back in the starting lineup at 5K. The minutes, 36 last game. That's appealing. I mean, it's a terrible, 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 terrible spot for him, but 30-plus minutes of a guy mid-20s in usage without Devin Booker, I mean, that's intriguing. And if Devin Booker comes back, it's going to hurt his usage a little bit, but it's going to open things up a little bit for him as far as getting some more open looks potentially. I'm okay with it. And if Devin Booker does not come back tonight, Josh Jackson, I know he's been absolutely terrible, but 3,700 or 3,600 on FanDuel, still going to be hard to get away from the upside that he has shown before, as far as like at least punting him here. So, yeah, not going to go to the Elia Kobos, Melton options, even Booker if he plays. Not really looking at those guys in any significant like format. If you wanted to build, get some exposure in tournaments, building a bunch of lineups, you can. But yeah, Phoenix is just, yeah, blah. Last game of the night, Golden State, Minnesota. Golden State 11-point favorites, 238.5 over under. Whew. Butler expected, I think, to play in this game. Who knows? There's just been so much conflicting information about whether it was his idea to sit out the last game, or if the team decided they should sit him out the last game. Who the hell knows what is going on with Jimmy Butler? That whole thing is a crapshoot. We do have Jeff Teague is questionable. Tyus Jones is questionable for this game, and obviously Jimmy Butler questionable for this game. The Minnesota side of this pretty much relies really, really, really heavily on what happens with Jimmy Butler and what happens with Jeff Teague and what happens with Tyus Jones. Jeff Teague at 5,200 in a game like this, I know he has not been great this season, but 5,200 in what should be a very high scoring game, I have a lot of interest in him, especially tournaments, even cash games. Like 5,200, if he suits up, like, doesn't need to do a whole lot to pay off that salary. Like, you're happy if he gets you, the 25, 28 fantasy points, but like, God forbid he comes out and has one of these 39, 30 plus fantasy point games. You play him at 5,200, you'll take that all night long. So Jeff Teague, if he suits up, and especially if we get like Tyus Jones, is out, or Jimmy Butler is out, like, yeah, I have some interest in Jeff Teague here in this spot. I'm not going back to Derrick Rose. I understand, like, if Jeff Teague is out and Jimmy Butler is out, but Tyus Jones is going to play, like, you could definitely still roll out Derrick Rose in cash in tournaments. If Teague is out and Tyus Jones is out and Jimmy Butler plays, you're still looking at Derrick Rose a significant amount. It just mostly comes down to like the status of Teague and Tyus and Jimmy Butler for this game. But Derrick Rose, someone, if something were to happen with any of those three guys, I would have a significant amount of interest in this spot. Okogie, a perfectly fine option if Jimmy Butler sits. If Jimmy Butler plays at that 8K price tag, I'm going to have a hard time not hitting that lock button. Over on FanDuel 9,600, blah. Not super intrigued. Like, give me Victor Oladipo for 9K over Jimmy Butler at 9,600. Over there, at least. Townsend tournaments, sure. If Jimmy Butler comes back, that's obviously going to eat into his usage, but we've seen upside out of him the last couple games. He stopped being like this, crybaby on the court. So I'm perfectly fine with Townsend tournaments. Still not someone I feel super comfortable with in cash games, but yeah. That pretty much does it. Wiggins, yeah, Wiggins is fine in cash too. I mean, 5,700, it's not a terrible price for him over on DraftKings. On the Golden State side of things, Draymond Green, 6,900, very nice. Still too cheap. I know he hasn't been great, but coming off a monster game, not monster, but a good game, still too cheap there. FanDuel, 8K. Block steals, upside. I'm fine with it in cash. Going to be tough to get on top of that tournament salary, though. KD, under 10K. One of the better ways to get exposure here. I love him in all formats. Steph, absolutely love him in all formats. Fading him, even at his elevated price tag, really scary. 10-3, but has scored, over 50 fantasy points 6 of their 9 games. 10-7. Like, yeah. Like, the crazy thing is with Curry, like, doesn't even need to shoot a ton to get you, get you there. Like, 45 fantasy points on the night where Klay Thompson was just taking like 400 billion shots. He shot 9 times and still got, 45 fantasy points. It's not great for tournaments, but like for cash, I'm super happy with a mid 40, with 50 plus upside. So Steph Curry, absolutely love him in this spot. I'm gonna be hard with some of the other guys on the slate that I like that are a little bit cheaper, but still a good way to get exposure here. Draymond Green's my guy over on DraftKings for sure, though. I'm fine with Klay Thompson. Price 6,100. Yeah, it's one of these spots where it is still a good spot for Klay Thompson in tournaments. You can definitely get some exposure there. I don't think I really want the Damian Jones, the Kevon Looney options, but in a matchup against Cat, like you could see one of these guys getting there. So in tournaments, again, someone guys that you can at least consider, but no real reason to like lock them in or anything like that. But yeah, that does it. That's all 8 games. Pretty fun slate. So yeah, just monitor the news, especially the Timberwolves stuff. So because that could have a pretty big impact on the rest of the slate. But good luck in all your contests tonight, and I will be back tomorrow.